I was reading the press release for Feed This Black Man again, and it
Yeah.
says that the original concept of a show was to sort of come up against stereotypes or whatever.
Yes.
Have you ever encountered any stereotypes when you were entering into the world of comedy?
Yes. I mean, it's the good thing is it's got better over time. But initially, if you go back like 15 years, when you'd never see more than one Black person on a panel show, it would come up in times like my first ever TV opportunity, which was Trans-Canadian Comedy Trail. I was very excited. I have a meeting with them, and they're like, "We like your acts, but could you like wear like one of those African multicolored things, and maybe you could come on stage with like a staff?"
Oh my
Right?
goodness.
And it was one of those things where I was like, okay, they like my comedy, but they want me to be more African so that they can, and that wasn't me. Like, it would be one thing if that was my personality, but I felt like that would be play acting because never in my life do I wear that. So why would I do that on stage? And so there was a lot of like, I talk about in the show that I did like 20 minutes of jokes on my first time on television, and they cut down everything but the 4 minutes where I talked about Africa.
Words.
It happens a lot, right? You don't even realize. Like you'll sometimes hear people going on about, oh, these ethnic comedians just bang on about being ethnic. Sometimes that's all that's aired. You talk about other things, but they're like, oh, no, we need to use this. And it's not necessarily mean-spirited. Maybe they're thinking, oh, this is different from every other act. We need to focus on this. But whether that's the case or not, it used to be that when you came on television, you were entirely there for your Blackness and your being a diversity. But the nice thing now that there are more voices, that isn't the case anymore. Like, you know, I've been on QI when there was another Black person on. I've been on a show and I've just talked about love, and they've not been like, could you talk about Africa? So I think there's still a way to go, but there's been huge steps forward.
Did you find that going on Britain's Got Talent helped you a lot then? Because I mean, obviously, I was looking on the show reel on YouTube. There's a wonderful 18-minute show reel there, and you seem to be covering a diverse range of subjects on there, which I thought was really lovely to see, actually.
Yes, actually, no, it transformed my career. Like, so it's the reason why I do a tour now. I tour every year, and I went from performing in pubs to performing in theaters. Your audience goes from a few hundred to thousands, right? And sometimes millions. It's absolutely absurd the viewership it's got. I've been to Mauritius and they recognize me, and Malaysia and they recognize me. It's more global than I ever thought. And I'm glad I didn't know when going on. I would have been way more nervous.
You've got a series on Radio 4 as well.
Yes. So my series, Citizen of Nowhere, is actually like, it's the thing I put the most into, right? Because, I mean, jokes aside, they fact check you. Because it's a news organization, you can't just talk whatever nonsense you like at a stand-up show. They literally discuss it, but as much as it requires more effort, the thing that comes out is the thing I'm most proud of. It's absolutely it's my favorite thing, because each episode is like it's a full dive into an episode. And then interestingly, how this show ends up being created is for each episode of my radio show, I write around an hour, right? And they use 28 minutes, right? Which means that I end up having 2 hours of extra material that was probably too offensive or too dirty or just didn't fit. And that's the raw material where I start building the tour, right? And I was looking at what are the recurring themes, and the biggest ones were aging, but aging not like physically, just like how you, and I used to protest and be so idealistic and a bit cynical now. It's that kind of like, you know, what would you say to your young self kind of thing. And I decided to take it a step forward and say, what would I say to my young self show, right? It's the idea of, you know, if a singer looked back at their first album, they're ashamed of some bits, but then there are also other bits where they're like, I wish I could still do that, because I found like I wish I could be as optimistic as I was when I was 20.
Yeah, yeah. But you're still relatively young though, aren't you?
I'm still, I mean, exactly. When I talk to the 18-year-old, I'm ancient, but when I talk to the 70-year-old, they're like, you child.